The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Welcome to Moments of Strength. I'm your host, Mary Kaufman. In this show, we dive deep into the lives of mothers' unique journeys of parenting and personal growth. From juggling family dynamics to personal passions and career ambitions, we'll talk about challenges, triumphs, and pivotal moments that shape their lives, emphasizing the strength and resilience that comes with motherhood. Thank you for joining us. Today's guest is Carolyn. Hi,
Hello.
Carolyn. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you being brave enough to come on and help me promote this show that provides resources and suggestions and tips and strategies for mothers who are in the throes of motherhood with little kids or teenagers or even people aspiring to be mothers, so they don't have to reinvent everything and they can feel a sense of community. So that's really the aim of the show.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I know each other really because our daughters are friends, close friends.
They're best friends. Yeah, they're always together.
So, and we haven't spent a ton of time together, but the time that we have spent, I mean, you have an interesting story and I would love to share some of that with other moms. So maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit, talk about who you are. You could really start anywhere. Some people start in their childhood and some people start from a significant moment. But just so we have some background about who you are.
Okay. Well, my name's Carolyn. Professionally, I'm a respiratory therapist. I have 2 daughters. I am remarried and I have 2 stepsons as well. Okay. So we have a very busy household. I have a daughter, my oldest is 25 and she has a son herself. And so I'm a grandma.
And how old is he?
He is 18 months.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and she's getting ready to have another one in May. So I'm going to be double grandma.
Yeah.
Which is super exciting. I'm super happy for her. And then I have a 16-year-old daughter who is friends with your daughter, who lives a very busy academic lifestyle and busy working and has many dreams of her own.
Yeah.
A little bit of background about how I grew up. I grew up locally here in Sun Prairie with my parents, and I have 3 older brothers. So I'm the only girl and the baby of the family. So it might have been a little spoiled.
That's so fun. Do your siblings live here as well, or?
I have a brother that lives locally in Sun Prairie, another one that lives in Marshall.
Okay.
And then another one that lives in Green Bay.
Okay, so
they're in the area.
That's good.
Yeah.
And did you grow up, were you close with your brothers? Are they much older?
The one closest to me in age is 2.5 years older. The oldest is 11 years older. And then in between there, yeah.
Okay.
So pretty close. Pretty close.
Do you think having 3 older brothers shaped kind of who you were? I mean, obviously it has an impact, but are there things you identify having 3 older brothers that kind of made you who you are? Or?
I think so. More aspect is my father would just treat us all the same.
Okay.
So doing wood piles, mowing yards, like things. I wasn't a dainty little girl. I was out in the mud and playing with my brothers and into sports. So I feel like I had a nice rounded upbringing, and it wasn't anything that just because I was a girl or anything like that I couldn't do. So we were all kind of treated the same and had our family chores to do, and everything was an option to do. Yeah. So made me kind of a well-rounded person, and I think instilled some really good work ethic.
Sounds like it. Also, your daughter has that too?
Yes,
Yeah,
they
does.
both
That has-
inherited that.
That's awesome. So growing up around here, and then did you, after high school, did you go to college, or what did that look like? Because we talk a lot about how, what happens when you're little, things imposed on you or things you choose affect what you do when you're older. And so just curious about how that path went,
Yeah, for myself, I went to high school here locally, graduated from Sun Prairie, and I actually graduated a semester early. I had enough academic credits to move on in my career. So I actually started at Madison Area Technical College, now Madison College,
Right.
and was a little bit young for that. It dove right into the college life and all the experiences that came with that, and didn't manage it always the best.
Right.
Did attend school, but also attended all the college life things as well. Not always the best choices, but
Sometimes they seem like the best in the moment.
yeah, they do.
And you learn.
And I think one of those things that happened academically to me is that a class that I was really good in it, I failed. And it kind of destroyed me because that was kind of my wheelhouse of something that I really enjoyed doing. And I wasn't putting in the effort or the focus at the time looking back.
Right.
And then when I did put in the effort, I still failed at it.
Ooh, that's rough.
Was really hard to kind of swallow. It was a humbling experience. And my father was in the Air National Guard, which is right down the road from the college.
Okay.
And I visited him and said, I need to get my life in order. Let's sign me up for the military. So that was a huge leap.
Big right turn.
Yes, very much so. So our decisions, you have a vision of what you want to be when you're little and what you want to grow up to be. And then we have left and right turns that take us on a different path. And that would have been one of those moments, one of the first real moments of becoming a child and going into adulthood that I felt really kind of curved and shaped me a little bit different than I had planned.
Sure.
And of course, my mother was not happy being the only girl and the youngest of the family. Why none of my brothers joined the military, but yet her baby girl was seeking this. My father just took it in stride and helped me and made it my decision. We talked about it as a family, and I ultimately decided to join the Air National Guard. So I left for that and cried and got homesick and was questioning that decision that I made in my life. But it was a super, super positive, great experience that I had.
Great.
So I left for the military and I did the Air National Guard for 6 years. That brings me back home after your training. So I continued to work at the Air National Guard and then decided to go back to school, try college again.
Okay.
And then I was aligned with most of my senior classmates because I had graduated early. So I didn't miss any time, let's say, for being on track with that.
So you left for training, and by the time training was done, you got back, and then you were
I was maybe like a semester behind.
Okay. Gotcha.
But yeah, I caught right up with all my classmates that I had graduated high school with because I had graduated a semester early.
Great.
So
That's good timing.
kind of made my mistakes early and learned, and then went away for the military, and then came back and continued on with my college career, which is where I went to school for respiratory therapy. Did not know what that profession was.
How did you decide on that?
Honestly, when I came back from the military, I worked at the Guard base.
Sure.
And when I was working there, I was like, I really want to be in the medical field. I enjoy the medical field. I did join in the military in the medical profession. I was a pharmacy technician for them. Okay. And I wasn't really clear on what I wanted to do. High school career, probably like a CB student. I wanted to be a physician, but didn't feel like I had the grades to get to where I wanted to be. So I was just kind of asking people in the medical field on the military base, like, what should I go to school for? I think I need to start at Madison College and then maybe prosper and grow into something else.
Right.
And it was a recommendation of one of my elder coworkers.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. whatever that is. And I got into the program and started up school and kind of found out what it was that day.
Yeah.
And I've kind of grown to love it and enjoy it. It was supposed to be a stepping stone career path,
Right.
and I've kind of just stuck with it just because of life events.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, even from the time that we talked, the variety, I think your career is what it is, you know, and your title maybe, but the experiences you've had are not the same.
They
you know,
are
there's
not.
a lot of varying things that you experience. Even just patients, I mean, every person is different. So even if you're doing the same thing, it's definitely not the same experience all the time. So
No, it's not. Yeah, I could, you know, you think you go in, you do the same job, you do the same treatments, but they affect people differently, and everyone is so different that one thing that helps one person may not help another.
Right.
So you do have to be adaptable. Yes, is it helping people with their breathing? Is it giving sometimes nebulizers? Is it managing people on life support? Is it helping a newborn? Is it helping an elderly person? It's all of those things, but they're all tweaked a little bit different to meet the needs of those people to best help them.
So when you were in the Air National Guard, you were also attending school.
Correct.
So, and for people who aren't familiar for how that works, can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
When you're part of the Air National Guard, when I signed up, you sign a commitment for your time. At the time, it was a 6-year commitment. So I signed to work with the Air National Guard. I went to my training, which is full-time. So you start off with basic training. And I believe that's like 8 weeks now.
It's like a boot camp?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So basic training is like a boot camp. You get everybody gets their essential military background with that. It does not depend on what career path you chose within the military. Everybody goes through that. It's kind of your basic training. Once your career path is, I knew what I was going to be. I was going to be a pharmacy technician. So I knew what school I was going to go to. I knew how long the schooling was going to be. And after basic training, you graduate from that and you move on to your technical college for them.
Okay. Yeah.
So then you live on the base, on an active duty base, wherever your school for that profession is. So after basic training, you all kind of separate and go to your prospective school, wherever that may be for that profession. You attend that school for the length of time that's required. And it's like attending college. You go to school all day. You do some physical activity with training, but you live on the base. So you are very much just like an active duty person.
Did you enjoy that?
I did. It's a different life.
It's it's different. You know, the reason I ask questions is because everybody doesn't have some access to that, you know.
Yeah.
And people in the military aren't always walking around, you know, describing what that is like to people. So it's not a promotion for the military. It's just you know, sort of a window into that.
You get close to the people that you're with. So you shared kind of a dorm room. I had a roommate. We became really close, really good friends. We were in the same profession, so it's kind of a study buddy too. So they kind of keep you together by your profession, so in the same dormitory, if you will, to kind of give everyone a picture of what that's like. You could have study partners or study sessions, but it was very much like a college life in living at a dorm. But yet you put on military clothing and you marched to and from your classes. So very structured. And then you did have some freedom in the evening after your duties were all completed. And that was the life for a good 6 months for me. And you do miss the holidays and you miss your family time. And the majority of the people are new graduates from high school that go into the military, just kind of the age group. Some can be older too. But the majority of them, this is just coming out of high school. So you get homesick, you miss your family, your traditions are kind of broken, whatever those are for you and your family. So that's hard to get used to. I did have my father as a mentor by being in the military. So we had some discussions about that, and there was no FaceTime or Skyping or anything back then. So it was a lot of phone calls home and just talking to family through the holidays. And then really just focusing on the education part. So you learn to study habits, and it was kind of nice to not have all the outside distractions and have that structure. So I came
Especially
back
if you're
grown.
someone who, is drawn to those distractions a lot. Like maybe with your first experience, that I say that because I had a similar experience with my first semester of college. I feel like it would have been nice to have that structure for my personality, just to
I mean, you want to experience
in.
all the things, and sometimes you get a little lost. And I feel like the structure just made me kind of find myself again, and wasn't doing what I wanted to do. So when I came back, of course, my mother, who was terrified for me to be in the military, was like, "That was the best thing for you," because it really gave me structure. It got me aligned with where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. It kind of led me into some adulthood and responsibility, and the skills that I learned to take care of myself and also help others. It's a selfless act, but at the same time, I think it helped me more than it helped the country, if you will.
But a better you,
a better
better
me
for the country. So.
Yeah, it made me a very productive person of the community. So I did enjoy that. And I enjoyed that we call my family in the military. So my military family was very great to be around. Leaned on a lot of people in that, grew with that, and just took it all in, and just made me a better person and gave me that structure that I needed then to continue on my college career again.
That's good. Okay, so then you're at college, and while you attended college, you were in the Guard the whole time?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So what that looks like is the Guard does one weekend a month. It's not structured as, every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks you're attending. They put out a schedule. This is Guard drill weekend. So school, whatever that looks like, Monday through Friday, attending college, and then working your own little part-time personal job or whatever you have time for, was what I did. And then once a month I had to go to Guard drill. And that was doing the pharmacy technician role that I was trained to do in the military. That was my job that I would perform then on the weekend.
Makes sense.
Outside of that, the commitment was 2 weeks a year.
Summer or something.
In the summer, And that was at different bases, different active duty bases. You'd go and sometimes practice wartime situations where you camped and you lived in a tent and you tried to do your professional career in those atmospheres. And we were required to do that ever so often. We had to go do that type of training. And then sometimes it was just going to another active duty base and me actually working alongside the active duty members that were doing pharmacy technician. So it's kind of jumping into a facility, into a hospital that you haven't worked at before, and going and doing your job. That wasn't something you do full time, so it's kind of acclimating to how that is. You've been trained for it, but they do it every day, and you're kind of doing it one weekend a month, and then you're jumping into a different facility for 2 weeks, which was very encouraging. It was a lot of training because we all have the same goals and have to meet the same requirements to get signed off on your education and then grow within the military as well.
And if you're a person who gets fueled by or enjoys being around other people, I mean, that's a lot of new people to meet and new places to see and watch how different people carry out those same tasks. And I mean, you're just getting an education, even just being in a new environment.
You meet people, different personalities are out there and everywhere that would make us all unique. And you just take in a lot of different experiences and a lot of different suggestions. And I think they take in things from you too. So they grow and you grow. And usually it is not an issue to fit right in and do the job. And people have been very welcoming to that. In that part of my career, it was very much a family-oriented thing. No one ever made you feel like, you're just here for 2 weeks and that you're a problem. It was a very welcoming environment and educational.
Right. And everybody understands because everybody's doing that. Everybody's part of the scene. They understand, like, it's not necessarily turnover, it's just different people carrying out that task.
Right.
I think too that, I mean, you'll see that later in your life, you know, just jumping into new scenes with your nursing and going to different hospitals where you didn't maybe know anybody. So it's just interesting how, you know, that kind of repeated for you too. And the military thing, you know, I grew up in the military, and that whole showing up to a new base and you're the new kid, but you're not really, because everybody there has been the new kid probably sometime in the last 6 months to 2 years, and everybody just kind of understands that's how things go. So connecting with people happens much more quickly because everybody knows, like, you have a short amount of time to introduce, become friends, have some experiences, and then go. So that's just an interesting thing. Not everybody has that experience in life, but it's interesting to see how that manifests and then comes up later in life too. So.
Yeah, I think it makes it easier to adapt to new situations.
For sure.
Than if you didn't have that experience. So if you do get that experience, some people go to school and then they live in the same town and they went to college and then they get their career and they work at the same place. And you kind of get honed in to how things are done for your experience. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But you haven't experienced anything else different. And I think throughout my life that has constantly been something that has happened is I have to adapt. I have to, you know, read the room type of situation and meet different people. And it's been super humbling and it's been very productive in my life. And I enjoy it so much. I love to see how other places and other people do things and other facilities that I've worked. And I kind of take it all in, and it's really made me grow professionally, because not one place does everything perfect.
Right.
If it did, we'd all be doing it that way.
And you can't attach to something so hard that you have no ability to let that go and be open to some other idea or other experience. So following college and the Guard, are the kids here yet?
I had my first child when I was 19 years old.
Okay.
So yes, not at the beginning, but was pregnant in the military. Okay. And again, that was 1 weekend a month at that time. So did have her while I was attending college. Okay. I was completed with my first year of my 2-year program and had her pretty much like the second week of my second year, which is a very hard year to have a child. Yeah. And even my professors were questioning, like, are you going to be able to do this? I have no idea. Right. You know, it's terrifying. Number one, wasn't really expected or planned.
Sure.
It did happen, and we took it on in full force. I had great support from my own mother and family, and then my partner at that time was very supportive as well.
Sure.
So I did continue on with the college. I had her on a clinical day, which a clinical day for college is you not attending a classroom. You go to the local hospitals and you perform the tasks and learn how to do the job on what you've been educated on thus far. So a simple task for something in my profession is giving a breathing treatment, which is called a nebulizer.
Sure.
That would be an easy task. That would be something that we were doing at that time. And then doing a full assessment on the patient, like you get your basic skills down. And I had her on a clinical day, and we're only allowed to miss 2. Oh my gosh. Well, we don't just bounce right back into it. So I was discharged on the other clinical day. So right away, this first semester of my second year, I've missed the maximum number of days that you can miss because I had a child.
And you're a new mother.
And I'm a new mom.
And the baby's crying.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm doing Guard, and I'm doing school.
Yeah.
And working part-time. So honestly, on the way home from the hospital, we stopped at the college so I could take a test. And then I went home. Oh my gosh. Yeah, just a little pit stop to take an exam, and then went home and continued on being a mom. Some professors were a little bit more lenient than others, but the sad part is with being so young and having those commitments that I needed to do and deciding to continue on with those commitments, did put my child into daycare at 2 weeks old.
Oh. That's young.
That's very young. So the bonding is a little bit different. I didn't get that experience because life was kind of in the way, and her father got more of that bonding time. So we kind of worked it out where, yes, she had to go to daycare, that we tried to do it as part-time as possible.
Sure.
And then he got more bonding time with her. So that, and honestly, they probably are a little bit closer because of that. But I wouldn't have my career or be able to support my family if I hadn't continued on with that path. So that was hard as a new mom, a young mom, and making those tough choices to continue on. Even though you have a great support system, it's still, you're the mom. And
You're the mom.
And you're busy and you're away from your baby is very, very hard to do.
And I think, just to stick to that for a second, I mean, you're 19, you've got all this other stuff going on. You've just been your whole life. And this happens at every age whenever you have a child come into your life. It's figuring out you still are you, and you haven't done this before. Right. So the crux of it is the child needs you to be a thing. You don't know what that is. You haven't experienced that yet. You're making, hopefully, the best decisions you know how to make, and you learn after you do it. You know, that's like, in every scenario, you're a new mom in that scenario, Correct. So fortunately for her, she had a parent, that could be close to her, and you can be grateful for that. But there's always this thing that's like, but I'm the mom, just like you said. Right. But I'm the mom. So you want to be all the things to your child all of the time, and it's just not humanly possible, but most of us have that drive to do that. And this is the whole point of the show, and anything else that I'm doing is saying, like, it's okay to want to be you, despite the fact that you want to be the mom in every single scenario. And even that happened a few years ago. And still, when you talk about it, you still have that feeling, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard because you always, as a new mom, the first time you're a mom, you question your choices, right? You don't know if you're doing the right thing. You don't know if you're making the right choice. You're navigating it. You're hoping you're doing the best, like you said. You're hoping you're doing the best things for yourself and for your family and for your child. And you pour so much of yourself into making that happen to provide the best that you can for that child while still trying to maintain yourself a little bit. And trying to do all of those things can make you feel a little bit lost. And I feel, from recent aspects now, looking back, my now adult child that has a baby leans on me a little bit, asks the questions herself. She knows what to do in certain situations, but you still call mom or text mom and question, am I doing the right thing? Should I do this? Should I do that? And it seems like you're like freaking out and you don't know what you're doing. But honestly, you already know the things that are best for you and for your child. And you just need some reassurance. Right. And she's like, oh my goodness, what would I do without you? And that feeling is that way when you're a mom and navigating things. And I'm like, you just learn from the people before you. Right. Because I've been there. I questioned my abilities. Oh, and for sure. You don't always know it. I still wonder sometimes if I'm still making the right choices, even though my children are older.
Because you're still a new mom in that scenario. You never escape that because they've never been 25 before. Right. They've never had a baby before. You've never been a grandma before. So we can be wise about some things, but then what happens is your next child is nothing like your first child, maybe. No. So now you're trying those same tactics and it doesn't work maybe, or it doesn't resonate, or, they learn differently, grow differently, advance differently, all of those things. And so guess what? Now you're a new mom again of 2 children, and that person is different. So I think the message really is understand you don't know it. Understand, it's going to be a struggle, and you have to embrace it despite all of that, and you have to get up and do better the next day because
Right.
you learned something the day before. And yeah, and we're still doing that. We're
Yeah.
still doing that with our kids.
Every day.
For sure.
Just trying to do the best you can
Yeah.
to not screw them up, I guess.
Yeah. Let
let's
them make
just
those
let's
choices.
be good people.
Yeah. So, okay. So you're in school, you've had a baby. Life is so easy.
Yeah.
Just swimming through. And so then when you get done with school, she's like 3?
She was a year old
Oh, when you're done with that program.
when
right?
I was done with
Okay.
that program. Yep, because I was halfway through the program when I had her.
Okay.
And so I had that whole semester, and actually, I'm sorry, let me take that back, a whole year to do. So I finished that semester, had Christmas break, and then had one more semester.
Okay.
And then we, at that time, the program's changed a little bit now, but we also had a summer session that we
Okay.
had to do. And once that was completed in August, she was almost 1. She was born in September. So she was almost 1 year old. I completed the program. I graduate from the program, and I have to take a major test. So now you've graduated. Yay, you got your degree.
So what?
Yeah.
On to
And
the
now
next
you
thing.
have to go get credentialed.
Yeah.
So now it's like taking a board exam.
For sure. It's a lot.
And that's a lot of pressure and a lot of studying. And you get nervous about that because your career's kind of on the line
Right.
at that point. You have to pass this test to be able to do what you just spent 2 years training to do.
Right.
And so I took that test, passed that test, and got a job at a local hospital and started working at a local hospital. I worked night shift. And a lot of places start out with you starting at night shift, which
So overnights.
overnights. Yep. So I would go into work for 11 o'clock at night and get done at 7 o'clock in the morning and then sleep during the day. That worked out best for our situation. My ex-husband is my children's father, and he would work evening shift.
Okay.
So she would go to daycare during the day. I would sleep, and then he would work pretty much part of that time, and then be able to work into the evening. I'd pick her up, do dinner together, and then I'd have to go into work while they slept at home during the night. So that's kind of what our home life was like. That wasn't always the best shift for me. That's a hard shift to work. I applaud anybody that's a night shifter.
That's a hard shift.
I cannot do that shift anymore. As I've aged, that is no longer anything that I like to tackle anymore. But yeah, you do what you have to do to provide the best for your family, and you adapt. And was that something I would have picked to work for a shift? Absolutely not. But that is kind of where the profession started, and I knew that going into it. And then I've advanced to different shifts throughout the years, and that you just navigate at the time as well. Because again, that's all a new experience. You know, you're figuring out daycare, you're figuring out parenting, meals, and work life.
Yeah. And you can have a plan, a long-term plan, 5-year plan, whatever, and you can see those things, but there's just so many variables that are out of your control or you don't know are going to crop up. And so I think it's good to have some idea, of what you want to do, but it's really high level, and you kind of have to roll with the things that are unexpected that come up.
There's a lot of variables that take you on different paths that you never envision. Yes, have your goal, have your plan, but the road that you take to get there has a lot of turns, U-turns.
Yeah.
A lot of sharp turns can happen that take you in a different direction. They're all learning experiences. They're all great experiences. It might not be what you envisioned. It might not be what you necessarily want at that time, but I always kind of feel like things happen for a reason, and when they do, like, that's just the path that you're supposed to be on. You weren't supposed to go the way you thought you were going to go, or you were deterred to a different direction. And you might still get to the end result that you wanted, or you might choose that, hey, that actually wasn't what I should be doing. I maybe should be doing this instead. So I think those things happen for a reason to get you to be where you are. And if you would have asked my younger self, would you still be doing this? Would you still be where you're at? Would you still just kind of be doing what you're doing, no, I would have not had thought that at all. But I do enjoy what I do. I do enjoy the path that I've taken and all the experiences that have come with it.
Yeah, those, when you feel like you got derailed, sometimes it's just taking you to a place that you never knew you would never know, you know? So
Right.
now you have all of these other experiences you couldn't have foreseen that weren't in your plan, because you can't make a plan with things you have no idea about.
Right.
And so, again, you know, a lot of that is struggle and framed up as struggle, because when things don't go the way we want, that feels like a struggle. But if you have a mindset where you expect the unexpected, then still going to struggle, because it's not something you're familiar with, but I think you can view it as a gift more than something bad that's been given to you.
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
It is. And I'd have to say to my, when I was younger, it doesn't feel like a gift. It doesn't feel like you can adapt as well. That's something that came with more growing and age, to be honest, just being through those experiences. Yeah, it felt a simple derailment that took me on a different path or a different direction, or took longer to get to where I wanted to. Those seemed very challenging to go through at that time. And now if one of those things happens or pops up, I adapt better. And that's just part of learning and experiencing life and adapting and going through those experiences. So for a younger mom or anyone really navigating those, those are a big deal at that time. And yeah, they're hard to go through, but I think you have to go through them to be able to grow, so that when something like that happens again, as you move on through your life, that it becomes easier to adapt. And you're like, oh, I've dealt with something like this before.
I made it through that.
We'll be okay.
Yeah. It will be okay. This isn't that, or somehow I gained some skill in that last thing to be able to push through this one. So in your career, can we talk a little bit about your career path?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had your night shift, and then you did that for?
I did that for a good year or two.
Okay.
And then I moved into, I had found another position that put me on evenings rather than, which when I say evenings, it's kind of like a 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. So not the complete daytime shift, but not night shift, not the overnight anymore. I found a different position at a different hospital, and that worked out better for just my own mental sanity and sleep patterns and just family life.
For sure.
Was a little bit easier at that time. So worked that into my career, and then decided, I might want to go back to school. I'm kind of derailing off the work life a little bit here, but just took a couple classes just because I always wanted more than just I graduated with an associate's degree, and I knew I wanted more than just my associate's degree for myself. And so I wanted to take a couple classes to help grow.
Sure.
And that pushed me off of some of those evening classes or evening work hours.
Okay.
And I had to work day shift, and they adapted. My work was great and adapted on the days that I needed to go to school. I didn't work every day. The medical field usually is not 40 hours a week. Usually it's like 36 for full time. And so I did 3 12s. So essentially I had 4 days off. So if it wasn't a day off and I had to attend school, then they would flip me to the day shift.
Oh, okay, that's nice.
Just to see what worked out with the schedule. And then I kind of just got scheduled day shift because I took on tasks in my own career. And so, hired for the evening shift and did that for a very short time, due to the fact of my work adapting to other things that I wanted to do. And I took on skills personally that only happened on the day shift.
Oh, gotcha.
So, there's the hospitals are busy during the day. There's a lot more physicians. There's a lot more surgical things happening. So I took on a lot of those skills that were part of my profession that weren't a responsibility on other shifts that I had previously worked. And then I became an asset to that day shift. And kind of just moved into that role and worked during the day.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And so how many years are there between the girls?
There's 8.5.
Okay,
So that came with its own challenges too. So I was not married when I had my first child, and there was a marriage in there. So we did get married, and we were too young. We were too busy. We lived very different lives. So like I said, he stayed home with her. I'd work, and then when he was at work, I'd stay home. So we didn't always parent together.
Sure.
We thought we were doing what was best for our child. Let's not have her in daycare. Let's always have her with a parent. We navigated that, and I learned over time that we grew apart. So when we'd actually have a day off together, our daughter didn't know who to listen to because there was always one parent, and we parented not very different, but you know, dad responds different than mom in certain situations. So,
well, and if you're not together a lot, the child can't put that together. They're little, you know, so they don't know.
Yeah, she was, I mean, maybe like 4 at the time, and we're building a house and navigating that, and
that's a lot.
Just parenting separately, so that when you were together, you enjoyed those times, but it was very strange because you were used to doing it on your own, and then it was very confusing for our daughter. So we wound up butting heads on a few things, and just wound up butting heads a lot more often, and knowing that we grew apart.
Right.
So it wasn't a healthy family relationship anymore, or dynamic. And we chose to end things and stay friends and raise our child the best we knew how, and navigated life that way. So now I'm a divorced single mom and with a career and navigating that. And it wasn't much different because we parented so separately.
Right. Yeah, you were kind of living apart together.
Yeah. And but the divorce was hard to go through, and then now you're single parenting, so there's a whole nother anxiety of parenting that came with that. We went our separate ways. We raised our daughter, and then we decided, well, we actually kind of still like each other. We didn't do anything wrong. We just had a moment in our life where we argued and didn't want our child to be in that type of environment.
Sure.
And we grew through doing things separately. So we decided we would try the relationship again. We did not get remarried, but we were together for multiple years, and decided that we wanted to have another child. So therefore, my daughter Cadence, who is your daughter's best friend, she came along, and there's an 8.5-year age gap between the two. And then we kind of stayed together throughout the years as a boyfriend, girlfriend, and a family. And ultimately decided that we're very similar people, and that we really didn't work out. So we did choose to go our separate ways. And Cadence thought we got divorced at that time. She thought we were married because she didn't understand.
She's little.
She's little. Yeah, she didn't understand that we weren't married because we never brought that up. You don't have a talk about that. Your kids just, mom and dad are together. And so now I have a teenager, or Koya was 8.5 years old when Koya was born, or Cadence was born, excuse me. And then we navigate through that life. We've been together for years. I have a teenage girl, and then I have like a daughter going into kindergarten, and very different lives, very different navigating, because they're in different stages of their life.
Very different.
One's into sports and friends and hanging out, and the other one's learning to color in tire shoes. But it was cute, and they have a great relationship, and they are very close. But it was different times to navigate it, rather than them being closer in age. So it was always a struggle for that too, to make sure you're meeting the needs of where your children were at in their own life.
Well, you have to shift so drastically in like no time, you know, because if they're in the same room or adjacent rooms and you're there, you've got everything going on with your job and your relationships. And listen, the whole relationship thing, I mean, people are complex and human relationships are complex. So, but if they're there and you've got a teenager who's going through all of these things as they navigate to try to be an adult to some degree, but then you've got somebody just starting out in life and you have to be what they need in those moments, and to shift back and forth, you know, that is challenging as a parent.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, they both had a different mom. I'm the same person, but being a young mom navigating life and growing into adulthood and struggling kind of financially paycheck to paycheck, you're just starting your adult life. College kids don't have a ton of money.
No.
So she got a different upbringing and younger childhood than her now younger sister.
Right.
Mom was established in a career. I had maternity leave. I had bonding with her, which I was like, that's great.
Yeah.
Maternity leave was amazing. I wish it was longer, but of course we all do. Yeah. But yes, very different experiences for each of those children because of the time and the growth and the career and where I was at in life. And the older one will say, I always had it way harder. And I think the firstborn kind of does because you're navigating
She's
and
not wrong.
figuring this out. Yeah, you're not wrong. You definitely did. But you kind of broke mom down, if you will, because I've experienced that now. And it's not something that's going to heighten me as much as, with the second child because I've already lived it.
Yes.
Even though it's a different child, you have navigated that already. You don't overreact on certain things that you've kind of already navigated for when the first time you're just like, oh my gosh. You're kind of a little bit more mellow. So the second one does get away with more than the first.
Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just part of life.
If you, as it continues, if you even have more, by the time the last one, it's like, the things you think are so important to impose or shape or mold your child, you really realize what are the priorities? Was that something that was really necessary to have them participate in that for that many years? And then by the time you get to the last one, it's like, you know what, you don't even have to, we're not even going to do that for you. And then the older ones are like, hold on. You made me do that for like so many years. Yeah. It's like, right. Thanks for helping teach me how to be a better and different parent.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's not that you don't care.
Hard
it's
knocks.
Just more like you kind of mellow out over and you're like, was that a big deal? No. Yeah. Just like you said.
Yeah. That's all part of life and just learning. You have to go through it to learn those things.
You do.
So. Okay, so back to professional career.
Yeah.
So talking about the unexpected things that come up. So let's see, Cadence, so she's 5. Okay, it would have been a handful of years after that COVID hit.
Yes.
And then that again was, I don't want to breeze over anything between those years. But when you and I spoke before, I was just so interested in your experience, and we don't have to go all the way into, relive the COVID years, but just from your perspective, working in the medical field and being a mom during that time and having to work essentially because you have to keep your family going. Right. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like for you? Because I think there are a lot of women who were in different positions during that time, trying to figure out how they were going to work, take care of a family, keep everybody safe, with what they knew or didn't know. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. A little bit about my career. I had worked at a local hospital here in Madison for 19 years, and that was on the day shift, and that's where I kind of grew and got myself into more of the daytime aspects. And I made a choice to resign from that position full time and just go to an as needed position and work very, very part time still at that facility. Okay. So like leaving, but not leaving.
Sure.
And I took a supervisor role with a different facility. And I did that for about 9 months and I was let go from that position. They were kind of restructuring.
Okay.
And that position was then eliminated. And I was devastated. That was the first job that I had ever lost. And I gave up an established kind of full-time career to go into that position. Right. So as a mom, that gave me huge anxiety.
It's threatening.
Yeah, I have 2 kids. I'm a single mom. How am I going to do this? I'm the provider for insurances, like all the things, a lot of weight on the shoulders, and kind of had a breakdown that day, not knowing what to do. I did have a coworker at my previous job that reached out to me and said, I saw an advertisement to do our career down in Chicago. And I'm like, okay, it's probably not in the best area because the financial compensation was much more than what I was used to.
Sure.
So I was thinking rough neighborhood, not the best side of Chicago probably, but yet I can still do a career and it's a job. So I was job searching. COVID hadn't hit yet, but there was talks about it. It was kind of out in the wind.
Sure.
And I decided, I'm going to call the number and see what this is.
Sure.
And it wound up being through an agency. So kind of like a headhunter.
Gotcha.
For medical profession. There's a lot of companies out there that we just call agencies.
Yeah.
And this agency had a contract in Chicago that was a little bit more lucrative and that I could get by financially with, but I would have to go to Chicago.
Right.
So I didn't know much more than that about it at the time. I decided to jump and take that leap. And the day before I was supposed to report to that job, I found out where the facility was and I found out where I was working and that it would be day shift because that's what I was used to. And I basically signed a contract saying, I'm going to go work down here for 13 weeks and I'm going to be a respiratory therapist at this facility.
Because you have your plan and we can see the plan and there are no variables that will come and affect that plan.
Right. And then I found out it was at Northwestern in downtown Chicago in a very right off Michigan Avenue. So nice area, prestigious hospital, Ivy League type hospital. Still didn't know what my duties besides being my profession were going to entail. And I started and they trained me on their facility, how to navigate around this massive hospital that is city blocks wide.
I was just going to say, it's enormous.
Right.
And just for reference, how long is that commute one way?
One way is 2 hours. And during the time when I signed that contract, COVID hit. So now I've committed to work 2 hours away from home for 4 days a week. And COVID is now rampant. It's new. It's freaky scary in New York. Massive amounts of people dying. And you're going to go into that. And you're going to go into that in Chicago.
Right.
So scary. Drove to Chicago, 2 hour commute. Nobody else was on the road. That was a creepy, eerie feeling.
Is so eerie.
And then to arrive into downtown Chicago and not even see a single other car.
Yeah, that is
no homeless
so strange.
people, nobody walking around. Like it was like a scene from a movie. Like you just walked on a movie set. And massive buildings and massive hospital and
no one.
Nobody out.
You have to ask yourself,
what did I just do?
what don't I? That everyone else, yeah. That is so bizarre.
So very scary. I mean, I didn't know how long, I didn't know my schedule. I didn't know how long I was going to be in Chicago. I didn't know how I was going to get even food because COVID's now there and it's now shut down. The world has shut down, everything's closed. And so massive amount of food in a cooler. Gonna stay in a hotel room. Picked a hotel across the street from the hospital. I don't even know where to park my car. All the things that you have to navigate. And then now I'm in a different state. I'm working in Illinois. I'm now going into a crisis pandemic with people I've never worked with before. So yeah, I got trained and kind of just jumped in and used all my skills. Found my schedule and was working 4 days a week. And then finding out I was their first agency person that they've ever had. So they were navigating that. So now I'm their new baby, right? So we kind of grew through that process, and I kind of helped them adapt. And through my career and my experience in supervising, was able to adapt really fast and really well, and kind of help them set up for how they were going to take on more agency people.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
So they actually hired 26 agency people to come into their facility at that time to help for COVID. And everybody, you didn't know anyone's background. They didn't interview, they saw my resume, and that's all they had.
Right.
We didn't interview, I showed up.
It was kind of desperate times.
Desperate
you know?
times.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you worked in a nursing home or you worked in a big facility, a small facility. I just need you. Was kind of their aspect. So they kept their core people, I'm going to call them, their core, their hospital staff that they had, their respiratory therapists. They kept them in more of the high acuity ICU style patients where you're running life support. And then once they got to know us, they navigated us into different situations, but kind of left it to be more of the easier breathing treatments, part of our career. Not that those aren't important, and not that they don't come with their own challenges, but their staff were trained and worked with their physicians, and expectations were already there. And I felt like they handled that very well. And then until they got to know people's backgrounds that they acutely hired in to help.
Right.
And it was a dumpster fire. COVID was crazy. My experience was in Chicago. It's a heavy populated area, a lot of different ethnic backgrounds. We learned as a society that some ethnic backgrounds were affected a lot heavier than others. How you live, do you have multi-generational in your family? One person gets it, your whole house gets affected.
Right.
Just the way we kind of had to isolate. Well, you're isolating with those people. If one person got it, your whole family's probably going to get it. And how does COVID affect, one race compared to another, is kind of what we were all navigating at that time. Did it affect certain age? It had no prejudice. It took out healthy people. It took out elderly people. It took out different races in different ways. But it really didn't have a prejudice. I think it just more had to do with your culture and how you lived. And it was just mass amounts of people, mass amounts of trauma. They had a pager that would go off for if somebody needed to be intubated, which is a breathing tube and put on life support. It had, if this person was in trouble, how can we prevent them from getting to that level? So those pagers were constantly going off. It was so hard to keep up with mass amounts of people all at once. No matter how much you prepared, you couldn't prepare for that.
No.
And we haven't experienced that. I've never experienced that in my career. So everybody was trying to navigate and figure it out. But I'm at this
everybody at the same time. Yeah, even if because it felt like the world was doing that all at the same time.
They were.
You didn't have this team of people who knew what to do so you're just like figuring it out as it's coming in.
You do, and you have all those experts, right? You have experts that are above you. You have experts below you. Everybody's navigating this. So if I was the lead physician and you were a lead physician in a different city, I might call you up and be like, what are you guys doing? Right? But everybody's navigating it all together. This is new for everyone. And it was great to watch that aspect at a prestigious facility, because there was a lot of experimental medications to treat. There was different physicians doing different surgeries to try to help people navigate through COVID. There was different ways that COVID affected different people.
Right.
You could have been really sick with it, and then I could have got it, and it would have been like a mild cold. There was just it was so hard to navigate through all of that, but people were sick and people were dying. But it was really interesting to watch all the different studies happening at this large facility.
Right.
And to grow through it. And yeah, did we make mistakes? For sure. We learned that reacting in a certain way probably wasn't the best way to react. We grew through it, and then there was another waves of the virus that happened, and more people died. And Then it got lighter. Then if it was super contagious, it wasn't seeming to be as bad for symptoms on people. It was more mild.
Right.
But if it was harder to get, it was more deadly because it felt like it was stronger for the different variants. That's not always true for everyone. I'm sure tons of people died with all different sorts of variants, but that was my experience of what I was witnessing.
Sure.
Wearing a gas mask at work, having the protective equipment.
All of that.
All
and
of
then
that.
trying to still do the
Do the
things you
job.
need to do, dexterous. and
Yeah.
all
I mean, you showered in the morning and within 5 minutes of being at work, you were sweating and wondering why you took that shower.
Yeah.
Because you had to have all the protective gear on. Issued a gas mask and you only took it off to grab a drink of water when you were probably one of the only people in a room. Eating lunch, we stayed in a break room and you couldn't have more than so many people in the break room to even have lunch.
Right.
And to take your mask off, to clean your things, and then put it all back on for every patient was very slow moving. You forgot something, you have to take it all back off. You have to go get what you needed, put it all back on. You have to wipe everything down. Was part of the experience, and it was exhausting. It was a lot of hours. It was very exhausting. I learned a lot. I got to work in a great facility, and
then you would go home for weekends.
Yes.
After being in this just
in that environment.
trauma, and then go home and, hopefully you didn't have. I mean, just the thinking back then is like,
Yeah,
did I bring it
home.
with you? Did I bring it with?
So what they had done is you had your protective equipment, and I wasn't in a facility that ran out. They had ample amounts, and someone else in my profession will probably have a different experience at a different facility. But I was very fortunate to work at a facility that did have all that available and provided ample isolation gear, and we call it PPE, so personal protective equipment. And that was also something that I felt very humbled and rewarded about. I picked this career, right? I thought I was going to be in a horrible side of a big city.
Oh, right.
And I'm at an Ivy League place that has ample amounts of protection for me. And I'm away from my family. And I'm scared for them because the world shut down.
Right.
And here I am basically going into the fire, if you will.
Totally.
And they're at home wondering what's going on. And there's a lot of death going on, and it's scary and it's unknown, and we're navigating that. And then to drive home, yeah, that's scary too. I wore most of the time the scrubs that the hospital provided. I did wear mine at some points, but I would leave my stuff at the hotel room. So I kind of rented a hotel room like you would an apartment.
Gotcha. Because you were there all week. Most of the week.
Yeah. So I would leave my items, pretty much my work items, clothing, personal belongings, all just there at the hotel. And I would just drive home. And sometimes I drive home in scrubs, sometimes I would not. So now I've infected my car.
Yes.
And I'm going home to my family. And had during the time of being a supervisor, had a new boyfriend and wound up, now that is my husband. But going home to him, and it was Clorox, bleach wipes, hospital wipes, everything. The whole car got wiped down. Was never more thankful for having leather in my vehicle.
So much easier, yeah.
Would not let anyone near me. At the home that my boyfriend at the time had, it was entering in through the garage right into the laundry room. So it was, please put a towel on top of the washer and dryer. I stripped down in the laundry room, doors closed, nobody touched me, nobody talked to me, just disinfected the car. And so I'd pull up, disinfect the car, go into the laundry room, strip down, put a towel on, first thing into the shower. Shoes didn't come in the house, everything got wiped down. And then not until after all of that was done
Then you could say hi.
Could I hug my child?
Oh my gosh.
And say hi to anybody, because it was, again, the unknown. So that was the life for about 9 months. I would drive to Chicago. So my work week was get up at 3:30, start driving to Chicago, and arriving to Chicago in time to be at work for 7 a.m.
Okay.
Basically would park the car, leave my bag for the hotel room in the car, go to work after shift, take whatever I needed back to my hotel room, and then work, sleep, and then do it all over again, drive home and repeat those actions. It was a lot of time away from family. And then you also then have your children doing schooling from at home. And that's a whole nother thing that everybody got to navigate.
Yeah, it's great.
And how to keep up on that and make sure your child's doing what they need. Do they need help? Do they have the resources that they need? How is everybody doing? Are you getting food? And the whole, do we have toilet paper? Because for some reason that was the thing.
Weird.
It was very odd.
It was weird.
I remember one of the times coming home, the kids want what they want from the grocery store. They all have their things. And being like, all right, we're going to all take a trip to the grocery store. And seeing empty shelves. And they were like, they were struck. They were shocked. Those things weren't available. And I'm like, we're going to do the best we can with what we have available, which was also scary. But we all made it through. We all adapted. We had figured it out. And then that became normal. Grocery stores obviously got restocked and things got better with that. Kids navigated the online schooling and navigated that as well. I navigated work and it became the new norm. And I wound up being kind of the rapid response, which is kind of called when somebody is sick and all of a sudden they're deteriorating, but they're not quite a medical emergency.
Oh, okay.
Like things are getting worse, let's try to stop them from becoming horrible. I became the specialist that responded to those type of people and tried to prevent or escalate care. And I did that for COVID. So I was a person that responded to COVID emergencies. And hey, are we escalating to the ICU? Do we need to get this person further help? Or can we do a different treatment to try to help something? So I kind of was the responder for that and took that lead role for the facility in Chicago, to the point their core people, if they happened to be that person, had to ask me, what are we doing?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because everything was changing. Nothing, what was normal today on how we treat this was not normal the next day.
Right.
We were trying to evolve and grow and navigate through this.
So fast, trying to do that
Super
so fast. Yeah, because
Super fast.
lives,
Yeah. Yeah, so that was an experience. And then we have society having their own challenges through all of that as well. And this was now my new norm. Wearing a gas mask at work and wearing all the things was the new norm. And then we have treatments that get introduced. I had not had COVID at that point. Yes, did it affect some of my workers? For sure. My family hadn't had it. My daughter, the youngest one, Cadence, during the height of COVID, what COVID was kind of heightening at the end of March. The world kind of shut down mid-March.
Right.
End of March, I go to Chicago. She's navigating that. She had been sick. Find out that she actually has an autoimmune disease. So now I have a daughter who is immune compromised. COVID's out there. I'm working in it, and I'm away from home. So that was an experience and a challenge. I had to tell my daughter that that's what she had over the phone because I was notified when I was in Chicago. We kind of had our suspicions. She had gone through a whole bunch of testing, trying to figure out what was wrong and what was going on with her. She just knew she didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And then navigating that.
Yeah, and then you're out of the state.
And out of the state, and being a parent, giving news like that.
That is so hard.
Over the phone, didn't feel right. But that child handled everything in stride. She just takes it on.
She does.
And that doesn't define who she is.
Right.
If you knew her, you might not know that about her unless she tells you. And we just navigated through it. I kept her as safe as I could, and then hence the over wiping down of the car and stripping down in the laundry room and showering and being a little overprotective on that, because we found that out as well. And then just kind of continued on doing the COVID therapy. Winter in our area is kind of treacherous on the roads. And I continued at Chicago until January of the following year.
Okay.
And decided I don't want to do that drive anymore. And with the weather being icy roads and just being dangerous.
Terrible.
And the times that I was driving was always dark. So an opportunity came up for me to continue on with the COVID crisis and to continue on with my profession. But now this is in Arizona.
Oh my goodness. Well, you're not driving on roads anymore.
I'm not driving on roads anymore. So I decided to take a contract out in Tucson, Arizona, doing the same thing, 48 hours a week, 12 hours, but strictly for COVID.
Okay.
COVID's hitting that region of our country rapidly.
Okay.
And they need crisis situational help. So people from all over the country, in all different aspects of healthcare, are kind of navigating throughout the country and responding to, if you will, the COVID crisis areas. And Arizona happened to be one of them for me. And so now I'm across the country. And I'm not going home. I'm not bringing it to my family.
No.
I'm out on the West Coast, and my family's back in the Midwest. And we're still at home for school. And I'm navigating through COVID. And that was during the Delta variant, and January through March of
2021.
2021 would it be? Yes, because it was
That would have been the following. Yeah. Because 2020.
Because it was the following year. So that brought its own challenges, because now I'm removed from my family.
Right. Totally.
And Delta variant for COVID hit human beings very hard. And people would be fine, and they would throw a blood clot and stroke out, or have multiple cardiac arrest, like a major heart attack because they threw a clot. It was kind of causing them to shower clots throughout their body. For the people that I saw anyway.
Right.
Obviously different experiences in different places, and different professions could experience something differently. So somebody comes in, they're talking to you, and the next thing you know, they're dead.
My gosh.
It was super depressing. I was in the ICU for those patients. I was hired to be in the ICU. I was hired to be in a gas mask all day and just treat these people and navigate and try to keep them alive. I'd start with about 9 or 10 people on life support, and by the end of the day, half of my patients would have died every day.
Gosh. Were you able, did people leave, if they got into that situation, where they're on, like, it's dire, did anybody ever, like, come back, or was it pretty much a matter of time? Or?
It was pretty grim.
Yeah.
It was pretty grim. It was very depressing. Professionally, you felt defeated, because there wasn't a lot of positive outcomes. Yes, were there some? Absolutely. Some people did finally get off of life support. Some people did survive, but you watch people suffer for a long time and then pass. Some people pass fast. It kind of caused, during that time, some pulmonary fibrosis. And what pulmonary fibrosis is a stiffening of the lungs. Our lungs need to expand and be flexible and have elasticity. And this COVID variant would kind of make it like cement in there. So these people just were suffocating, and you were watching them slowly suffocate. You were helping them with whatever device you could, but in the end, it wasn't helping.
Right.
And that would happen as well. So now you have people that shower clots and die very rapidly and very fast on you and unexplained. And then you have other people that are slowly suffocating because their lungs are hardening. You have people getting lung transplants. You have all these things, and then you have the person that comes in with a common cold, but you have to treat them like they are the person that's going to pass away. Yeah, we just don't know what's going to happen. So the experience in Arizona for me was just massive amounts of death. It was very sad. And and again, it knew no prejudice. If I could narrow it down to like this ethnic background got hit harder, or this age group got hit harder, or somebody with, other problems pre-COVID, other health concerns, you could have a marathon runner come in and throw a clot and that was super healthy and ate super clean. And then you could have somebody with like major health problems that actually fought through it.
Right.
So it was just so difficult to navigate. And that was probably the most depressed that I could say I had ever been, just to watch so much death and then be alone away from your family, where you just want your family close during those hard times. So it was exhausting. And I would go to work. I didn't even have a car. I flew out there, rented a car, and then had the rental car returned, and I just walked to and from work.
Oh, okay.
So at least I had like that piece of the walk to decompress.
A few minutes.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And then it was renting an apartment for an amount of time, a furnished apartment. That wasn't nice. It was what it needed to be. It was a bed, a shower, and somewhere I could cook food. And I would just do that and pack my lunches and take my food with me and navigate the best I could, eat the same thing for an entire week, because I went to the grocery store when I rented a car, I took an Uber, and I grocery shopped and went back, and I just had what I had.
Yeah.
And that continued for 8 weeks. And I did fly home a couple times in between, did get a break.
Okay.
I did not spend days off out there. I would group them together and fly home.
Oh, gotcha.
So it was work or fly home or have family fly out to me, and we would rent a car and get away from that area.
Just away.
Yeah. And that was humbling. The West Coast practices medicine a little bit different than the Midwest. Just, we all do the same job. We all run the same type of equipment, but how we do it is sometimes a little bit different. So again, a growing experience, taking in all these experiences and how people do things and how they navigate through things was just inner growth, but again, very sad, because I dealt with a lot of death out there. And then after that, realized how valuable of a mom I was to my family, because I was away and I talked to them.
Sure.
It's not that I didn't talk to them or they didn't see me ever.
Right.
But it was requested even by my adult child that didn't live with me anymore to please never go across the country ever again for work. And it was just validating too as a mom, like, okay, they need you, too. You can't, like, yes, you need to help professionally in the medical field during this crisis, but your family needs you as well. And just how sad it was all the way around.
It's just a lot. Yeah, my gosh.
Yeah.
And then you're thinking of your own existence. You know, if somebody totally healthy can walk in and just die.
Right.
What are you doing with your time, with your family, and then trying to prioritize that? Because, I mean, for people to come, and many people did that, came here or wherever they went in the world to help running into the fire and try to save lives. I mean, that's a quality that is so admirable, and we need that, you know, as a society and as a globe. So to have that quality and to go and do that, and then to also know that your family is back here and also needs you. I mean, that is, you're right back into that, like, trying to prioritize, juggle what is the right decision. What do you think your kids learned because you did that? You know, can you think of like how that affected them in a way that that will define some of who they are? Yeah, I think. But how do you think?
I honestly haven't asked them. I mean, that's a great question. I haven't asked them how that affected them, except for the please don't do that again.
Yeah, that was a pretty clear message.
But I think, my kids have adapted to roll with the punches. And also, I don't have a very good work-life balance, work-life to home life balance. My kids my mom always works all the time. Yeah. And I do pull a lot of hours, and I do have multiple jobs. People usually have one full-time job. I have 1 full-time job and 3 part-time jobs. So these children have grown through their childhood where I single mommed it pre-COVID. Full-time job wasn't enough to get by. So it was a full-time job and a part-time job. So they've known me to always work a lot, but then also now I'm working a lot in crisis and still trying to navigate that. So I think they just were like, well, mom's at work again.
Right.
From the outside looking in and not knowing their perspective. I think that they were like, my mom's in it. This is what my mom's going through. They would see pictures of me in my full gear, and that's not the normal mom at work situation. So they knew I was going through a lot, and they knew I was exhausted. And I think they individually kind of stepped up themselves. My older daughter, she was in college when this was happening. Her sister was in middle school. So I think that also helped because she was also getting into adulthood.
Right.
That she looked out for her little sister. And when I was across the country, my boyfriend kind of stepped up and parented. We had decided to get engaged, and we had a house together. And what that looked like was him being the parent at home and me parenting from afar. And that was super helpful. Could I have done it without? No, absolutely not. You had to rely on your support systems, and your family got really tight knit.
Right. Well, that'll teach you too what your relationship is made of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's an important thing to support you and support your kids, and same thing, vice versa. And can it survive something like that? So. It did.
Yeah, but truthfully, I mean, that is a question that I'll probably go home and ask these children is, what was that like for you? Yeah, you didn't like it that I was across the country, but my goodness, what was that like for you? Because we just did it. There wasn't really a question at the time, and I didn't question those things.
But do you think, so because, we talk about how things are unpredictable, we don't know what's coming. You can have a plan, you can get derailed, COVID can come. Fundamentally, there are some things as a parent, as a mother, that you do parenting your kids that are the things that get you through something like that. So do your kids fundamentally know that what you're doing is for their best interest, even if it's hard?
Right.
So, and I met your daughter, and I met her after that. So, she's great. I think
she's
I feel
wonderful.
That way.
Yeah.
But she's independent. She's driven, and maybe she was these things before. But middle school, you're starting. That's a treacherous time. We've established that on the show. I think every episode, but. To watch your mom go and do something so selfless and work to help the world on a larger scale, that affects you as a child because, well, one, you learn that can be done, and if you have that quality now, you watched somebody else do that, and maybe that helps your outlook be a little different. Maybe you're in middle school and it's treacherous, but maybe you're watching for ways you can help instead of ways you can harm because middle school is hard. Right. Or, and she does that. And she, if anyone in my family, it's not me, but if anyone in my family sneezes or, is feeling low or something like that, she wants to know how she can help. And, even being best friends with my daughter, if she ever doesn't feel good, Cadence is at the door with some remedy, know, and she knows, she'll research it. She knows what she's doing. So I think if she was already independent, I think watching you do that maybe enhanced that for her. You did all of that and you came home. So maybe there's a little piece of invincibility to you, because we look at our parents like that a little bit. So, I think you've shown them like so many things can be done. Even your older daughter, it's like, sure, she grew up and into parenthood with you. And now she's a mom. And so she watched you do all of that. And be accomplished and do the things you want and go see. I mean, I know you travel a lot, and it's like you're doing the things you want to do, and that's such a fantastic example for them. So even though it was hard, and even though it didn't play out the way you maybe thought it might, it's been great. And, you know, I think you're out there just still doing that, still helping people every day. And I know this was your one day off, and I feel very privileged that you came here to spend it. But yeah, I just think, you know, you're a great example of that. So however you feel about that, you should know that I feel that way, and that, you know, I'm so thankful that, you know, Cadence and Maddie are friends, and it's just been so great. So
they are great. I'm glad they have each other. Yeah, and Cadence says, you're right. She, before even COVID, she's been super independent. She's always been kind of the nurturing, more into the medical stuff, and wants to help people regardless of what's going on with them. If you don't know her and you meet her, or you talk to her on the phone, you do not think she's a 16-year-old girl.
No, she's mature.
Very mature, very independent. And I don't know if that's because it got instilled. I think some of that's just some of her natural abilities, and that's who she is.
Sure.
Some of it had to be navigated with her going through her own personal experiences. COVID, I didn't worry as much with her about with the online schooling because she had been so sick prior. She was already kind of doing it because she was missing so much school from not feeling well. So that was kind of an easier transition. It wasn't great, but it was an easier transition for her. But yeah, she's such an independent kid that just kind of takes the leadership. She does want to be a physician herself, and I applaud that. If that changes, that's totally fine. She makes me proud every day. She's a good student. She is a good person. She's so kind, so independent, and just really proud of her for her doing all of that. And maybe some of that's for me. I like to think so. And of course, as a parent, you just want your kids to have more than you ever had. Not to the point where they're spoiled and that kind of thing. Like, you don't need things, but you just want them to be better than you. And I think that's true for every generation. So whatever she decides to do, she'll be great at it. And I just want her to be better than her mom. So if seeing that the no boundaries are there, and do I want her to have the work-life balance that I have? No, absolutely not. I want her to enjoy her life. But yeah, like you said, I have one day off a week. I do that to provide for my family and still continue the lifestyle that I would like to have. I do enjoy traveling. I do enjoy going and having some fun. But I work a lot. And is that always the best thing for my family? Probably not. But I don't disconnect from my family. So even though I'm at work, I might be managing the house while I'm at work. Text messages, phones, calendars, all of that is still very much a part of my life. But I'm
family
not
dinners.
there.
You do family
I
dinners.
do family dinners, yeah.
That is so great.
If I am home for dinner, which is rare because I do a lot of 12-hour shifts, but I do have some days where I'm 8-hour shifts, or it's a day off, like today. Everybody eats at dinner.
That's great.
Your daughter thought that was the weirdest thing ever because you guys have sports and you navigate your own life situation. You have more children, and somebody's always got to go somewhere.
When they were little, we used to do that more. But you know, as they
get busy.
It's just hard.
You're busy. They get busy, and you adapt, right? There's nothing wrong with it, but yeah, I will make everybody shut down and do dinner. And you don't have to talk about your day. You can if you want. But that's the one time that I'm like, absolutely no phones. Do people grab their phones sometimes? Sure. But I try to do the no phones.
Just be present.
Just be present at dinner, eat your food. You want to talk. If not, we just have that time together.
Yeah, that's great.
Because it's limited. And whatever, if I'm not there, whatever's for dinner, then is my lunch the next day. And I'm just like, how was it? What do you guys think? You know, and on the one day I'm off, I cook and I prepare dinner, and everybody has to be there for it.
Yeah,
you can run and do your things, but you're home for dinner.
Yeah.
So your daughter's been included in that.
Yeah.
And
likes it.
she's like, this is great. And not
like
everybody, and I'm like, everybody's running around. Everybody's
Yeah.
I have a busy house. But just for that half hour for dinner, if you will, just taking that time out to just be one whole family and just take a moment is important to me.
I think that is a very nice ritual. So we've actually been talking for kind of a long time, which is great. I love it. I think the things that you shared here are important and, will be valuable for the people who are watching. And before we go, though, is there anything of value you think we didn't cover that you would want to share with moms or parents or anybody watching?
Just probably the takeaways from me is, yes, you can have busy lifestyle. You could be a stay-at-home mom and not have that work aspect as well. But just that we're all trying to navigate through it together, and each experience is different in each stage of your life. And you're going to question whether you're doing the right thing, and all you can do is your very best and think that you're doing what's right at the time and growing from your mistakes that you make, because we're going to make them. And then just moving on and just being the best that you can for your own situation is kind of all that I really wanted to get by with moms. And you can have a busy work life, and there are times where I feel like I'm not a great mom, for sure. But then my kids come back through and they're like, well, you should go on the show. You're a great mom. And I'm like, I'm really boring. I work.
You're not boring.
I work. But it's interesting to them, and it's their life too. And you are still parenting, even though you're not always present. Or maybe you are the person that's always present. And that's not a bad thing either. And do I want more of that time with them? Yeah, because it slips away really fast. But just for people to know that you're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
You're just navigating through this the best you can. And they're navigating through it too. And then hopefully one day you're helping them navigate through it.
Yeah.
That's how we grow.
With their babies.
Yeah. But just to hang in there. We all question it. And just lean on your friends and your other parents and just try to do the best you can through life. That's all you can do. Don't be so hard on yourself.
I agree. Some grace is good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you still have some of your day off left.
I
after we're done
do.
here,
I do get to enjoy some time.
I hope you enjoy that. Okay, so don't forget to keep your own perspective, but don't be afraid to step into somebody else's. Make sure you're out there showing up every day and being resilient. You need it. Your kids need it. We need it. Continue to pursue the things that you're interested in. And this show is here because we don't want moms, 2 billion strong around the world, to feel alone. Thank you.